Hello everyone, welcome to our new class. Today we're gonna start our unit 7 that talks about food, which is something we all love. Let's start. We are gonna use food to bring to our class the concept of countable and uncountable nouns. So what is countable and uncountable? The own name of it, the own words will tell us what is countable and uncountable. Are you seeing this? Count. Count is a verb, is the ability of you to count things. For example, here I have two books. I'm counting one and two. This is count. If something is countable, it means you can count. If is uncountable, it means you cannot count things. We have this concept in Portuguese too. We actually have this concept in every language because, of course, there are objects, there are products that are impossible to count because they are small, they are of a substance that it doesn't separate so easily as we think it should. So we need to understand how to grammatically interact with these objects, with these substances, considering the capacity we have of counting them or not counting them. So to start, we're gonna talk, we're gonna make some considerations about the countable nouns. And of course, we need to remember that noun is the name you give to normally objects or products, physical stuff that you make references in your phrases in English. Anyway, countable nouns. Normally, they are objects with a medium size, a big size, that you can differentiate only by looking. So normally, if you can look and differentiate these objects, you can count them normally. It's not a rule, it's something that happens with countable nouns, but of course that there are exceptions. So I brought you some examples of countable nouns. Let's see here. Books. You have books. You can look at these books and you can differentiate them. You see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a countable noun. So you can say, I have 2 books, 3 books, 4, 10, 11, 1 book. They are countable because you can differentiate them. If we go to our second example, something everybody loves, potatoes. You can look at them, you can differentiate them. They are big enough for us to count them. So we have here 1, 2, and 3 potatoes. Third examples, cars. They are big enough for us to differentiate. And you can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars. How many you wish. And our last example of countable noun right now are chairs. They are big enough for us to differentiate them. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 chairs. So the countable nouns, what are the things we need to consider? First of all, every countable noun you can put in plural, all right? Não é necessariamente toda palavra que você puder colocar no plural é um substantivo contável, tá? Mas todo substantivo contável você pode colocar no plural. That's the thing. Plural. Every countable noun you can put on plural. They have a considerable size because if they are too small, it's very hard for us to count, as we will see on the uncountable nouns. And they are able to be differentiated because, as we saw in the cars, in the chairs, we can see that there are different chairs, different cars, different potatoes. They can be differentiated from the other, uh, the other objects that they are close from. So these are the countable nouns. Let's go to the uncountable ones. The uncountable nouns are just the opposite of the countable nouns. While the countable nouns have a considerable size, they can be differentiated, they can be put in plural. The uncountable nouns normally have a very small size, or you cannot differentiate them from themselves. So for the uncountable nouns, we have some types of products, some types of substances that are linked to this characteristic, to this being uncountable. So remember, we are always talking about normally because not everything has a rule that can't be broken. So the uncountable nouns normally are grains, liquids, dough. We'll see all of that in the uncountable nouns thing. Of course, when we started saying grains, liquids, or dough, you may already have thought about some examples. But I brought, as we did in the countable nouns, some examples for us to understand better what can we say about uncountable nouns. First example is the rice. You see, we can actually differentiate uh, each rice we have here, but they are too many because they are too small. So we cannot say one rice, two rice, three rices, or so on. We don't count rice because they are just too many. And another example I didn't put here, but I just thought sand, for example. Sand is smaller than rice. So actually, it's impossible for us to count sand. Second example, we have, well, this is too small. I'm so sorry. We have pasta. They are big enough for us to count, but when we are cooking, we take a lot of pasta in order for us to eat. So we cannot say we have one pasta here, two pastas here, three pastas. No, because they're just too many. Third one, we talked about liquids. It's just impossible for us to count water because we cannot differentiate different waters here inside this cup, this glass, I'm sorry, inside this glass of water. So we say it's uncountable. And we have, for our last example, another liquid, wine. Normally, liquids we cannot count. They don't go to plural because they just get so much together. They get so together that you cannot differentiate the how many liquids you have inside here in this cup of wine. So when we're talking about uncountable nouns, um, principally the plural thing. The plural is specific. And I'm going to explain this later, but we cannot use the plural as we use in the countable nouns to differentiate the substance from itself. You cannot say, I'm going to drink two waters, I'm going to drink three wines, I'm going to eat 50 rices, I'm going to eat two beans. You cannot use the plural like that. It's very specific. The second thing about uncountable nouns is that they need a measure. They need a measure to be used for you to specify how much of the uncountable noun you're gonna use. And we're gonna see this right now. So I wrote here 4 examples of uncountable nouns. Okay, we already talked about the fact that we cannot just put a number before them and say we're gonna eat 5 rices. We need units of measure. Units of measure are the only way for us to differentiate the quantity of uncountable nouns. I'm even gonna write here units of measure so we will understand what we are doing right here. In this case, measures for uncountable nouns can be almost anything you can think of. Think of a place in which you can put something. For example, I will cook rice. So I need a place in which I can put the rice and I can count. This, for example, is a bowl. So we can say we're gonna use 1 bowl of rice. This is a unit of measure. If we're gonna cook pasta, normally for 1 person, we're gonna use 100 grams of, pasta. This is a unit of measure. If we're gonna drink wine, we're gonna drink 2 cups, not cups, 2 glasses of wine. 2 glasses of wine here. And for pizza is a very specific unit of measure. Normally for things that are cut like that, we say slices of pizza. So we use these units of measure when we have uncountable nouns. Bowl, grams, glasses, slices, and we have a ton of other units of measure for us to use with uncountable nouns. But pay attention, because we have some strange situations regarding countable and uncountable nouns. I brought 3 examples of nouns that are both countable and uncountable. This happens every so often in English, and we need to be careful because sometimes we think a noun, we see it in plural, and we think automatically, well, this is countable, when it actually is not. Or nouns that can be used in plural in different situations where the plural exists but is not necessarily countable. We are just defining a characteristic of it by using the plural. Let's see these 3 examples. The first one is bread. Why did I bring bread? First, because it's very different from Portuguese. In Portuguese, bread is countable. You can say, I want 3 breads, I want 5 breads in Portuguese. But in English, the plural breads is used for something different. Very, very different. We have 2 units of measure for bread because we cannot put it in plural as to say of a quantity. We cannot use plural for quantity in bread. We can use I want a roll of bread or bread rolls, or you can say also loaf of bread. We cannot say 2 breads, 3 breads, 4 breads, 5 breads. Give me please 3 bread rolls. Give me please 2 loaves of bread. This is what we can say. But there is plural for bread. You can say I'm selling breads. This store has breads. What is the plural of breads? What it's used for? The plural of bread, we use breads to talk about types of bread. So we have three breads. Deles é de grãos, outro é de calabresa e o outro é de alho e pimenta. São três types of bread. There are three breads. That's how we use plural for bread. The second example is cake. Cake is not countable. You cannot say I'm gonna eat 3 cakes, 4 cakes. In Portuguese, we don't count either, but you can say cakes. There is a plural for cake because the cake as a countable noun is the entire cake. But if you're gonna eat, it's more common for us to say slices of cake, just like pizza. So you're gonna ask for slices of cake. When you use cake as a countable noun, you talk about the whole cake. So it's a birthday party and you need 2 cakes, 2 entire cakes. And our last example is the cheese. The cheese you use just like in cake or in pizza. You're gonna say slices of cheese. But as we do in bread, if you say cheeses, you're talking of types of cheese. So you have Gouda, you have Parmesan, you have cheeses. You have different types of cheese. And for you to practice, I have the first link in the description below from English resources. You have everything that you can learn of countable and uncountable nouns. And in the second link for us to practice, we have these very small exercises in which you have to decide whether it's countable or uncountable just by reading the phrases. This is it, guys. Thank you so much for this class. I hope you have enjoyed and see you on our next class. Bye bye.